Lesson 1. Building Hello World with a static template. In this lesson, we're going to build the standard Hello World project in Spring Boot. So, assuming you have IntelliJ already installed, we're going to create a new project. And if you don't have it installed, you need to go back to Lesson 0 and see how to install your development environment. We're going to click Spring Initializer on the left-hand side. Click Next. We're going to leave the group and the artifact alone because that's what's going to set our package, which you see down here, com.example.demo, and we're going to need that to be standard for some of the instructions to make sense. But let's name our application Spring Boot 01. And for the dependencies, the way the dependencies work is on the left is the groups, the categories of dependencies. In the middle are all the dependencies that are built in that are part of that category. There's many other ones, but you'd have to install those manually. And once you've selected the category on the left and you've clicked on the checkbox of the dependency in the middle, on the right, it gives you a list of all the dependencies you've selected. So we need to select the dependencies for web and for TimeLeaf. Click Next, and the project name, I'm going to set the project name to be the same in the metadata as I do on the actual file. It just makes things easier for me. And click Finish. Now, IntelliJ or Spring STS or even Spring Initializer, depending on how you're going to do it, is going to need to go off and do its thing and put things together. Now, what Spring STS, Eclipse with the Spring Tool Suite, or IntelliJ all have to do is to go out to Spring Initializer, get the necessary code, and bring it in. What IntelliJ does is it will automatically, if you're set up that way, do all the Maven imports and everything. And once you see the name of your application up here on the right with this leaf and the power button next to it, this means it is completely set up your application. You do not want to do any editing or clicking on anything until that happens. If your machine is slower than mine, you might have to wait a bit. But moving on. To create our controller, we're going to expand our application, expand the source folder, expand main, expand Java, and here we have com.example.demo, which the reason I didn't want you to rename it is so that you would know where you are now. And we're going to right click on that and select New Java Class. And I'm going to name my controller Home Controller. You can name your controller whatever you want. You don't even need to have controller in the name. I just find it easier to keep track of things. And once you click OK, it's going to give you a bare bones class with a reference to our package. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to annotate the class. I'm going to say @controller. And if I hit enter, it'll automatically put the imports in. So if you're used to programming in Java and you've used some other editor, this right here is going to save you a ton of time. You just need to make sure that the import that it's bringing in is the proper import. So the imports have been included in the text, not so that you can type them, but so that you can make sure that the one that you're importing is the right one. Then we're going to create a method. So public string homepage, and we're going to return index. And we're going to annotate this line as @request mapping /. Now there's a lot going on here. In this method, by returning a string, and since it's part of a class that's been annotated with @controller, what it's returning isn't really the word index. It is returning the name of the template that Spring Boot is supposed to load when this method is run. So index is a template that we're going to have to create in here. So we're going to say we're going to expand the resources folder, go to template, select new HTML file, and we're going to name it index. We don't have to say index.html. It's going to assume that, just like we didn't type index.html in the return box. And here we have the stub of a basic HTML page. And we're going to create an h2 tag and say hello world. Now, quick hint. If in your application you don't see this XML namespace for TimeLeaf and you don't see this closing slash for the meta tag, that means that your template for HTML templates, it needs a little bit of work. Now you can edit it every time you create a new template, or when you come here and right click on templates and say new, instead of saying new HTML, you can come down here to edit file templates. And next to HTML, you can edit what this template of templates looks like and click apply, and then it will add those additional characters or additional lines in every single document that you create, and it makes things a lot easier. But at any rate, so now I have my template. So going back to what's going to happen here. Spring Boot knows that because this class is annotated with @controller, that it is the controller. It decides what methods to run based on what web pages someone has asked for. And by saying request mapping slash, what this says is that when you ask for localhost :8080 or www.me.com or whatever site you're asking for, when you just ask for the root, the base URL of the site, this is the method that will run, and it will return the index template, which is this template. So let's take a look at how that works. We're going to hit the run button, which is this button right here, directly next to the configuration. Now, when running is a two-stage process, IntelliJ is going to run your Spring Boot application, which is this guy right here. And it, in turn, is going to scan your application for all of the annotations, set up everything that needs to happen, and then instantiate and run your Spring application. So once you see this banner, the Spring banner, the first step of executing your application has finished. We're now at the second step where it's going to go through, find all of your annotations, figure out what needs to be done. Notice right here, it's mapped your route for slash onto com.example.demo.homecontroller.homepage. com.example.demo.homecontroller.homepage. So it will do that for every single request mapping or get mapping or post mapping, and we'll talk about those later, that you have. But once you see this line, Tomcat started on port 8080, you know that your application is ready to go. Okay? So now, at this point, you're going to open up a browser, and we are going to take a look at what is available. So we're going to say localhost 8080 hello world. So your application works exactly as designed, and it's just that easy.